Hello, everyone, and welcome to the finale of our first season of our podcast. We are so excited that you are joining us and tuning in through whatever listening method you choose. This is Igniting Lifelong Literacy, a Chippewa River Writing Project approach. Before we get started with our content today, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement.
The Chippewa River Writing Project is based at Central Michigan University, located in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Founded in 1892 as Central Michigan Normal School, CMU is located on the ancestral grounds of the Council of Three Fires, the Anishinaabe, of whom the Saginaw Chippewa Nation is one. Seated under duress in the 1855 and 1864 treaties, this land was named the Isabella Indian Reservation and remains part of the homeland of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. It is our responsibility to care for this land and its people, and to be intentional and inclusive in our work. We recognize that this acknowledgement is only meaningful when combined with purposeful actions and genuine relationships that honor the land and its people. These actions include abdicating for the histories, cultures, languages, and the territorial rights of historic Indigenous peoples. As our writing project grows to include members from outside Mount Pleasant, we invite all CRWP members to recognize their own connection to the lands on which they reside and honor their own responsibilities to the original keepers of those lands.
In case you forgot, I am just one of the hosts of our podcast. My name is Becky Schwartz, and my partner in crime, so to speak, is Lyndsay Young. If you want to know more about us, we encourage you to listen to our introduction episode and our previous episodes in this season. This is our kind of season finale. We are entitling this episode Self-Care Suggestions That Aren't Gaslighting You and our Summer Reading PD Suggestions. Oh my goodness, I don't know why that word is so hard to say. Suggestions. Okay. Lyndsay, I think it's fair to say that it's been a long one, but the end of the 2023-2024 school year is within sight, at least here in Michigan. Our last day is Friday, June 7th. When is yours?
So our last day is June 6th. I just can't believe how fast this year has gone by. And honestly, it only gets faster as I get older. I also can't believe this is our last podcast for this year, and we've done 5 full episodes in our season 1. And I know as teachers, you all are insanely busy at the end of the year, but we truly appreciate you tuning in, listening to this final podcast of our first season.
So our final episode is focused on the wrap-up of the school year. It brings up a lot of emotions in all of us, and we're here to tell you that you can be an amazing teacher and actually feel all of those emotions. You can race to your car on the last day of school and finally have dinner with your family and friends that you aren't dreading because you simultaneously feel guilty for ignoring a pile of paperwork or lesson planning or tests that you have to grade. You can also be sad, or in some cases glad, that you're not going to see the same kids in your room for at least 2 months. You are a human being, and you are allowed to be that, a human being. There's no shame or gaslighting here in this podcast. Lyndsay and I are getting ready to talk to you about 2 major focuses in this episode. The first is self-care for teachers. We will be sharing with you kind of what we do for summer self-care and suggestions and ideas for you. And the second is some lists of possible PD reads for you. We won't say they're summer PD reads because if you want this summer to be the episode entitled The One Where You Do Beach Reads or even Minimal Reading this summer, then do whatever makes you happy. These are books we recommend for you at some point because they're good reads regardless of when you read them. So Lyndsay, like my students, our audience is likely sick of hearing my voice at this point, so I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
So this actually reminds me of a professional text recommended by one of our Michigan Reading Association keynote speakers, Berit. She wrote The Joyful Teacher. It focuses on how to maintain joy throughout the whole school year and to avoid burnout. And I'll actually get to that when we do our recommendations of professional text. But as for over the summer, I try to balance prep work with summer relaxation, which is kind of bizarre. Something I love to do and somewhere I love to go is Lexington, Michigan. It's this quaint little beach town on the east side of the state. They have beautiful, picturesque locations there towards the beach. They have a park. I'll normally go there early in the morning before crowds come and it's so chaotic that you really wouldn't be able to do work. I go there early in the morning and I do some work. And I feel like it helps me do more work because I'm relaxed and I'm just peaceful. So it helps me to keep motivated and do more work than I would, I feel, in a cramped classroom. Along with that, I try to make personal and professional goals over the summer that I want to try to accomplish. I focus normally week by week, so it seems more manageable. And actually, Berit Gordon recommends doing this, even putting the smallest minute goal to achieve, because we all know that feeling of when you do something and you get to cross it off your list. It's like the best feeling in the world. And you're like, yeah, I accomplished this. It's an awesome feeling, right? So these are a few things I do, but also just take time for yourself to spend time with family, to do things that make you happy. That's so important because, again, we need to be rejuvenated too. It's important so we can be there for our students for the following year. So, Becky, what are your recommendations and self-care tips for this upcoming summer?
Those are some good tips. For my tips, I'm going to kind of start with a little bit of a disclaimer here. I'm a single woman and I have no kids. So I speak from a bit of a space of privilege here in that I'm only responsible for myself and my bills. But I still think that these are things could be adapted to anybody's situation. For my first kind of self-care tip, and this is really my favorite, it's what I like to call schedule-free days. And this is where I make absolutely no plans. Or anything that involves a time frame. For me, teaching is a job that's so minute by minute structured and constructed that on my time off, I don't even want to make a commitment to a movie time. This is what helps me kind of fight my decision fatigue, but also to be present and listen to what my body really wants. So these days, I just kind of do what I want. If that's going shopping at a store or go visit a city that I don't get to very often, I do that. If it's laying on the sofa and kind of becoming one with my book or watching Netflix, whatever that is, I do that. If it's mowing my lawn and listening to an audiobook or a podcast in my headphones, I do that. If it's writing, I do that. I think you get the picture. But for me, sometimes just walking uptown and getting a coffee and walking back home, that's what I need to do. And this is kind of really what I miss about being a kid. It's having that unstructured alone time or unstructured time with my friends where I get to kind of go on adventures and feel what I want to feel and do what I want to do. My second tip is to kind of do some sort of project where you can see the progress and that it involves your hands. Teaching, again, not always, but fairly often, the results of that are intangible. And so I bought my first house in 2023, and naturally there's a lot I want to do with it. And although that list is really long and it sometimes is very overwhelming, when I do a project, I get to see that progress day by day. I get to see actual visual progress of what I'm doing, and that I did that with my own two hands. That's really validating. And it also gives me some understanding of kind of my more hands-on learning students and what they like about that and how it makes them feel a sense of progress to experience a tangible project. And finally, my third tip is to do the things that you can't do during the school year. For me, this is often doctor's appointments, or it's going to the movies during the day in the middle of the week. It can be taking a nap when I want to. It can be spending more time cooking and visiting my friends and family on their scheduled days off during the week, because a lot of my family and my friends work jobs that their days off are not the weekends. And so this kind of helps me like clear some things off my list, off my to-do list, but it also gives me that necessary time to disconnect and be more present with my friends and family. It allows me to do some traveling and kind of see some cities and some people that I haven't throughout the year. So for me, it's just kind of doing what I need to do when I need to do it. And for me, that is so important about the summer. Before we get into our individual book recommendations, Lyndsay and I have a shared one that we wanted to kind of shout out a bit. It's called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, Promoting Authentic Engagement and Rigor Among Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Students by Zaretta Hammond. This book is just absolutely brimming with amazing strategies and useful information. It blends neuroscience, brain development, useful and actionable information, and ways to build in small reoccurring moments of success that help all students learn. And that's the big one for me, because we know that struggling students, they especially need those small reoccurring moments of success to help build them towards those larger things. This book also makes you examine how your own brain works and how that affects how you teach and communicate with your students. It's a super powerful read. It really helped me start to see myself as a warm demander in my classroom, and how that's kind of helped push my teaching to the next level. It's helped push my classroom management to the next level. The relationships that I build with my students, it's helped push that to the next level. What do you have to say about it, Lyndsay?
So, Becky, I think this is a great recommendation. I think it's going to apply to a lot of teachers, because I feel like everybody needs to know how the brain develops and how students best learn. So I think this is a great read to recommend. So one book I'm going to recommend is one that I previously discussed before talking about self-care, was The Joyful Teacher by Berit. So I think this book is so important and prevalent for teachers K through 12. Really, anybody could read it. So many teachers are leaving the profession due to stress and burnout. That's been in the news, been in studies. It's really unfortunate. We need to start thinking about how to maintain that joy throughout the whole school year. This book gives advice and tips that you can implement into your classroom that will help alleviate your workload and to keep you and your students positive all year long. A quote from Berit that I truly appreciate, that I really truly think sums up her inspiration of this text. It says, "My wish is for there to be more joy and less struggle in a profession where people put in such tremendous efforts and do essential work. No matter what supports you might have in your school or district, you can take charge of your teacher growth and craft your own professional learning journey." So if you're feeling burned out, this may be a great summer read for you to ignite your excitement about the upcoming school year and to keep rejuvenated all year long, instead of just having that summer to rejuvenate it and then feeling burned out by the end. So this is one text, The Joyful Teacher by Berit. I'm going to highly recommend that you try out and read.
All right, and on to my two book recommendations. So these two books are books that I highly recommend. They're books that I've read and I've loved them so much that I've actually bought second and third copies of them to give to other teachers as gifts. I've given them to other educators that I have helped mentor. But these are books that I read through CRWP's book club. I've met both the authors at MRA conferences, so that's the Michigan Reading Association conferences, and they've both done Meet the Authors discussion with our book club. Those have been great experience, but the first that I kind of want to shout out here is Flash Feedback. Responding to Student Writing Better and Faster Without Burning Out by Matthew Johnson. He is a Michigan teacher as well. This is very much a K-12 book. I know I tend to give the perspective on the high school things, but this is definitely a book that you could use throughout any grade level. There are so many incredible strategies in this that are going to help you structure how you give feedback, when you give feedback, how to make it as effective as possible, how to structure your conference time with your students, how to make students reflect about their writing and your conferencing with them. This absolutely changed my writing conference system in my classroom. I've seen such exponential growth in my classroom, and students are getting so much more out of the feedback, and it's helped me become more efficient with it. And I look through this book anytime I make a new self-assessment or a new rubric. I kind of go back through these high points and just really kind of sit with it for a little bit as much as I can and use that as kind of guidance. And then my second one is one that I just read this fall, and it's also, I think, a K-12 read, absolutely. Although I would say it slants towards starting at upper elementary and beyond, but it's called The Will to Learn, and it's Cultivating Student Motivation Without Losing Your Own by Dave Stuart Jr., also a Michigan educator. Dave met with our book club for both this book and his other book, These Six Things, which I also recommend. I can't say enough good about this book. The way he teaches and the writer that he is, he just really gets what it's like, and I think because he's still in the trenches, and he's very honest about the balancing game and balancing all of the parts of our lives that are never ending, and sometimes how that's a win and a lose battle. But The Will to Learn is so full of just good information on how and where to focus your energies in the classroom to get the best outcomes, so that you have time for those other parts of your life, or you don't feel as guilty about taking time for those other parts of your life. He also has given me kind of my next year's goal for my evaluation, which is tracking like meaningful, genuine connections with students. I found that within the last couple of years that there are a handful of students by the end of the 180 days we spent together that they're still a bit of an enigma to me. And I think that if I'm more intentional about tracking my relationships with my students, I can make that number decrease over time. And for me, relationship building is the number one fundamental part of teaching. And it's because it's so foundational in my job. It kind of blew my mind that I had never actually started tracking these. And he's got a system that I'm going to use and borrow and work with. But that's just one of the tips of this book. And I think this is a book that I'm going to revisit every couple of years because it's got so many nuggets of wisdom that I'm going to go back to again and again and again and just get more and more out of.
Thank you, Becky, for those great book recommendations. I'm sure people will find them very insightful and definitely have some good summer reading. Thank you so much for joining us on our final episode of Season 1. We truly appreciate everyone that stuck with us through this podcast journey, our very first one. We will be back for another season, and more information on that will be coming out later this year. If you want to let us know how we are doing, or if you have any ideas for what we should cover next, reach out to us anytime through emails, ignitecrwppodcast383@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter through Chippewa River Writing Project's page. We are at Chippewa River WP. Thank you again to everyone that stuck with us, listened. From Becky and I, we truly appreciate it.